On the eve of my marriage to Willow. Her first love, the men she once idolized, got divorced. She came to me and said she wanted to call off the wedding. She said, "George, I don't want to settle," she said. "No matter how much you resemble him, you'll never be him." I calmly walked away, dyed my hair, put on my leather biker jacket, and returned to the battlefield that truly belonged to me. Later, she complained to her girlfriends. How could any woman fall in love with such a lazy, irresponsible man? Until one day, a photo started circulating online, on a motorcycle. A slender, fair hand rested on my chest, and I had my arm tightly wrapped around a woman's waist, raw desire practically spilling out of the frame. Then Willow finally called me. "George, who is she?" But the reply came from another woman's sultry voice. "Hello, Miss X. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm his legal wife." Chapter 01. I went to the jewelry store to pick up the custom-made wedding rings. In a month, it will be the day Willow and I get married. Although we designed the rings together, the style and the engraving were both chosen by Willow. As I looked at the initials WM in the private room, I couldn't help but feel that something wasn't quite right. The next second, I heard voices coming from outside. A woman said, "Hey, did you hear? Willow's first love, Makoto, just got divorced and came back to the country." Another replied, "I remember when he broke up with Willow 3 years ago, she was absolutely devastated." The first woman added, "Yeah, if George hadn't suddenly shown up and helped her through that dark time, she probably never would have recovered." The other said, "George, you mean that infamous playboy from City A? The one who used to waste his days racing motorcycles and living recklessly? Funny how a guy like that actually settled down for Willow. A real bad boy turned good story." Then came a hesitant laugh. "But now that Makoto's back, do you think the wedding will still happen?" "Well, the invitations have already gone out. If it gets cancelled, George will be the biggest joke in the whole social circle." After their voices faded away, I looked again at the initials WM, and a bitter realization started to dawn on me. I called Willow. She didn't answer the phone, but amid the noise in the background, I could still hear her voice say, "He's got no ambition. He's not even worth one of Makoto's fingers." Someone else protested, "Come on, Willow, that's harsh. He's rich enough already. Why demand ambition too? Besides, George used to be a total rebel. He's changed so much for you. You can't want it all." Willow gave a cold laugh. "Changed? How much? He's been orbiting around me for 3 years like some pathetic simp." "Well, he finally managed to get me to marry him," another voice asked. "Willow, don't you like George?" Her tone turned frigid. "Would you like a dog?" There was a pause in the air. Then she sneered, "Because taming a wild wolf into a dog proves I'm damn good at training dogs." I hung up, stared into the mirror at the man in a sharp suit staring back, and suddenly, I laughed. That naive, obedient version of me. I've had enough of pretending to be him. Chapter 02. Willow hadn't come home for an entire week. I listed our marital home on a real estate platform. Every single brick and tile in that place had been bought by me, and now, I didn't want any of it anymore. After finishing up the paperwork, I finally received her call, asking to meet. Even though she was the one who asked, she was still the last to arrive. When she walked in, a tall, slender man stood by her side. Makoto. He looked somewhat like me, maybe about 50%. Makoto held Willow's hand tightly, as if afraid someone might hurt her. His entire posture screaming, "Protective boyfriend." The air instantly grew heavy. No one dared to speak. Everyone's eyes turned toward me. I stayed silent, glancing down at the red string bracelet on my wrist, its threads almost worn through. I tugged at the corner of my lips faintly. Finally, Willow walked up to me and said, "George, I'm not getting married." I lifted my eyelids and looked at her calmly. "You're calling off the wedding?" I asked, leaning against Makoto's chest. Her eyes filled with affection. She said softly, "Makoto's back. I don't want to settle anymore. No matter how much you resemble him, you'll never be him." She added, "Do you understand now? I don't love you." I nodded slightly. "Yeah." She looked at me, stunned, as if she hadn't expected me to take it so calmly. Then she said, "You know, this engagement was arranged by our parents. I loved Makoto for 5 years and waited for him for 3. Now that he's back, I don't have to keep wronging myself anymore." My patience was thinning. I frowned slightly and said, "Okay, you done?" Willow paused for a few seconds before continuing. "My family will handle our side of things. As for yours, you can deal with it yourself. The wedding's off." I replied, "Fine." Then I stood up and started walking toward the door. Just as I reached it, Willow suddenly called out, "George?" I turned around. She was still standing where she was, but I noticed her other hand, hanging by her side, was clenched tightly. I asked, "Something else?" She frowned. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" I thought for a moment, What I really wanted to say was, I envy you. Your true love came back to you. Mine never will. But all I said was, congratulations on your upcoming wedding. As I closed the door behind me, I heard voices from inside. No way. That's it. That's George's reaction. Willow, didn't you say he was crazy in love with you? He looks like he couldn't care less. Can you shut up already? Willow's annoyed voice cut through. I didn't look back. I should have known long ago. No matter how much Willow resembled her, she'd never truly be her. The real one would never have left me to fall into someone else's arms. Chapter 03. After walking out, I went into a barber shop. I got rid of the side part I'd kept for 3 years. When the sharp, golden hair appeared in the mirror, it felt like I was finally becoming myself again. Then, on my wrist, I had a new tattoo inked, Jene Recul Jamais, French, for I never retreat. Finally, I walked into a shop I hadn't stepped foot in for 3 years. David, bring my bike out. A shirtless mechanic came out from the back. He looked at me in shock, eyes reddening almost instantly. It took him a long moment to react before he stammered. George? I nodded. Yeah, it's me. He looked me up and down, still dazed. George, what are you doing here? My gaze fell on the 2 motorcycles parked in the most prominent spot. One white, one black. I smiled. They're still here, he said. George, I wipe them clean every day. They're as good as new. You could take either one out right now. Where do you want to go? Should I tell the guys? I shook my head. Just bring it out. I want to go for a ride alone. He nodded. All right. The moment I got on, that long-lost feeling surged back into me. It had been so long since I'd last ridden, almost as long as I stayed off the bike, I could pretend that summer never happened. I turned to glance at the other one, the white Kawasaki, and thought of her. David followed my gaze, his eyes reddening again. He said quietly, I've been waiting for Sister Anna too. Little White has been sitting here untouched. I kept it beside yours, thinking maybe one day they'd both hit the road again. Then he asked softly, George, it's been 3 years. If I manage to wait long enough for you to come back, do you think she'll come back too? I froze for a second. So it really had been 3 years, he said. Didn't they say if you listen to the clock that runs backwards 1,000 times, you'll see the one you miss? I've already done that. But Anna still hasn't come back. I turned my head away. My nose stung a little, but I still smiled and said, it's just something people say to comfort themselves. The dead can't come back to life. Then I started the engine. What David didn't know was that I'd already listened to that song 10,000 times. I rode all the way up to the mountain peak, looking down at the view below. I shouted into the night, Anna, I did everything you told me, settled down, started a career, so why haven't you come back? You said you'd show me how you look in a wedding dress, but in the end, I can't even see you anymore. Tears slid down my cheeks. I muttered, damn, the wind's so strong, it's getting in my eyes. On the empty mountaintop, the night stretched out into a sea of stars. The moonlight cast its soft, silvery glow across the land, making everything feel gentle again. Behind me, there was a faint rustling sound. I spun around sharply, but no one was there. It was only the sound of insects in the grass. Chapter 04. After calming myself down, I rode down the mountain, but suddenly, the white Kawasaki was gone. David. I jumped off the bike and shouted toward the shop. Where's the bike? Who took it? Then, behind me, a horn blared. My heart started pounding faster than it ever had before. I took a deep breath and slowly turned around. Under the dim streetlight, Anna leaned casually against the motorcycle, dressed in a black, skin-tight outfit. Her sharp, striking features just as wild and defiant as ever. She raised an eyebrow at me and said, so, how strong's that wind? Then she smirked, her tone teasing and bold. Try hard badass, tough mouth. Huh. Chapter 05. It felt like time had turned back. To the very first time I met her, my parents had been fighting again, arguing because I refused to follow the rules. They beat me hard that day. All I did was tell them to stop tormenting each other and just get divorced already. Was that really so wrong? I ran away, trying to process everything alone. And then, suddenly, I heard a lazy, teasing voice behind me. Hey, pretty boy, crying out here by yourself. I turned away, irritation in my tone. Don't talk nonsense. The wind's too strong, it got in my eyes. She gave a small, amused smile. Try hard badass, tough mouth. Huh. Anna sat down next to me, resting her chin on one hand, and handed me a tissue. She said softly, being alone feels heavy, doesn't it? You don't know me, and I don't know you. So let me just be a quiet listener. That year, we were both 14. I didn't tell her what had happened, but she sat with me the entire afternoon. Later, I found out who she was, a student from the neighboring school. A troublemaker the teachers didn't like. A so-called delinquent girl. People whispered that she was a bastard child. One without a father since birth. Maybe it was fate. Slowly, we got to know each other. She introduced me to her friends, shared their secret hideout with me, and told me to be unapologetically myself, because, she said, some people out there will love you just the way you are. When I was upset or fighting with my family, she would appear out of nowhere, telling me I wasn't alone. She even stood up for me, putting those in their place who gossiped about me, saying I was no good. She said, "George, good and bad are always relative. If your personal choices don't harm anyone, or violate what's truly right, then no one has the right to judge you. You are who you are." And I, in turn, defended her against those who called her a bastard. When she broke down crying, I stayed by her side, held her gently, and let her pour it all out. I told her, "Anna, you don't have to be anything. No one should ever be forced to do what the law doesn't demand. Your existence alone gives meaning." We were like two people drifting in the deep sea, and finally, we found the same piece of driftwood to hold on to. Anna and I grew closer and closer. After graduating high school, we fell in love. That night, a group of us rode our bikes up the mountain, shouting into the night to celebrate our coming of age. Then, quietly, behind everyone else, I took her hand, and we ran. In that vast night, only our breath and laughter filled the air. She laughed behind me and asked, "George, doesn't this feel like we're eloping?" I still remember that summer, the fullest moon, the brightest stars, the sweetest sound of cicadas, and the most sincere eyes of a young girl. Under the blanket of stars, we hugged and kissed. In that moment, it felt like forever. Chapter 06. Anna, you're finally back. I missed you so much. My voice trembled, and even my body shook slightly. She said, "Look at you, all weak and pathetic." "I'm right here, aren't I?" I rushed forward, only to see David pushing the motorcycle toward me. "George, what's wrong?" he asked. "Didn't Anna once say it, that her bike and yours would never be alone? When I saw you ride off, I thought I'd better roll out Little White and start her up too." "Oh, so it had just been my imagination." I turned my back to him and pressed my fingers against my brow. "People say, you shouldn't meet someone too dazzling when you're young, because everyone you meet afterward will feel dull in comparison. Guess I was the one too obsessed, too stubborn." 3 years had passed, and I still couldn't face reality. Still prayed for a miracle that would never come. Chapter 07. When I got home, everyone was waiting for me. The moment my mom saw my dyed hair and leather biker jacket, she was furious. "Look at yourself. What do you even look like now? Not a trace of the Wong air in you." No wonder Willow called off the engagement. I stood at the doorway, suddenly not wanting to go in at all. When I turned to leave, my father's voice barked, "Where the hell do you think you're going? Get back here. Call the Liu family right now and apologize. Tell them it was your fault, that you acted rashly, didn't think things through. Tell them not to take it to heart." He went on, "The invitations are already out. You can't just cancel a wedding like that. And another thing, get that ridiculous color off your head. With you looking like this, who would ever trust their daughter to you?" I slowly walked up to them, then smiled faintly. "Why should I apologize?" I said. "She's the one who said she wouldn't settle. The one who wanted to marry her ex-boyfriend. She's the one who broke off the engagement. I gave them my blessing, so tell me, what did I do wrong?" Slap. My father shot up from his chair and struck me across the face. "Idiot," he roared. "You're a man, and she's a woman. Why stoop to her level? She's foolish, and you're even more foolish. Use your damn head for once. Do you really think the Liu family would let their daughter marry a divorced nobody?" My face burned with pain. He continued, "I regret ever letting you manage the company. You were supposed to handle things calmly and strategically. But you've ruined everything. Even if she was cheating on you, so what? Everyone in our circle turns a blind eye to that kind of thing. As long as the kid's yours and you get the benefits from the Liu family. What the hell are you so angry about?" I tilted my head slightly, tongue pressing against the inside of my cheek, and gave a small, cold smile. "You two can both play your own games, but sorry, I can't live like that." My father's chest heaved violently. He grabbed the cup from the table and hurled it at me. "Useless. That filthy woman's been dead for 3 years. And you're still moping around like this. How did I end up with such a worthless son?" Then he shouted, "George, I'll say it again. This marriage will not be cancelled. Even if it kills you, you'll at least leave the Wong family an heir first." Chapter 08. I didn't manage to dodge the glass. It grazed my face and opened a cut above my eyebrow. For a brief moment, memories struck me all at once. After Anna fell off the cliff, I sank into a deep depression. I tried to take my own life. The servants found me just in time and saved me. My parents said I was ungrateful, that as the son of a wealthy family, living surrounded by privilege, how could I afford to fall ill like that? Maybe they were right, or maybe not, but just as they never understood me, I could never understand them. I couldn't be like my father, capable of doing anything for self-interest, nor like my mother, always pretending to have feelings she didn't. I always believed that a person should have moral boundaries, whether toward employees or toward enemies, and why could I never understand them? Perhaps because, for as long as I could remember, each of them had their own family outside, so I never understood, if they didn't love each other, why did they bring me into this world? Until the company fell into crisis, then they decided I had to marry the daughter of the Liu clan. I refused, and they threw a photo in my face. It was Willow Liu. Stop acting like a martyr, they said. If you really don't want to live, then go ahead and die. I lowered my head and looked at the photo. For a moment, I thought Anna had come back. They looked too much alike, especially their eyes, as if a dying man had found one last ray of hope. I agreed to meet her, on the condition that my father start transferring some company power to me. So, to prove that I had matured, I completely changed my image. I wanted to stay by Willow's side, because even if it was only for that face, it was enough for me. I never expected Willow to take the initiative and leave me her contact information. She made the first move, and so, we ended up together. Later, I realized she was only using me as a substitute too. We were merely satisfying each other's needs. So, when she told me to quit smoking, I did. When she asked me to learn how to cook, I learned. When she wanted me to buy a villa, I bought one. She even told me to stop riding motorcycles, and I listened. In the eyes of others, the once rebellious me had turned over a new leaf for her. I loved her so much it almost killed me. Even Willow herself believed that. What could I say? I was willing to do anything for that face. So even when she crossed my boundaries again and again, I endured it, because whenever I looked at her, I saw Anna, as if she were still by my side, never gone. Until the day her true love came back. Her eyes had room for no one else. That's when I finally woke up from the dream. No matter how similar she looked, Willow would never be her. Chapter 09. Before going to sleep, I unexpectedly received a call from Willow. She said, "Your parents called mine." I remembered that earlier tonight, I had posted the first motorcycle photo I'd shared in 3 years on my moments. A friend commented under it, "George took me for a ride." Not long after, Willow replied to that comment. She wrote, "What kind of woman would even want to date such a man who's wasting his life like this?" So, I called her and said, "Don't worry, this marriage isn't just something you don't want anymore." Still, I couldn't help but feel a bit of regret. I would never again see the gentle look in her eyes when she gazed at me. Willow was silent. After a while, she gave a cold snort, her tone full of contempt. "George, I'm not anyone's accessory. If you want to marry me, you'll have to accept what's between Makoto and me. Don't expect me to belong to only you. Understand?" Then she added, "Anyway, this is just to please our parents. Since you love me so much, I can agree to marry you, but that's all." I rubbed the bracelet with our initials on it, and smiled slowly. I said, "Willow, if you really plan to marry me, does Makoto know about it?" She didn't answer. I could only hear her uneven breathing. I said, "Willow, I know you've been using me as a substitute for Makoto. Funny thing is, I've been doing the same. Do you know when you look the most like her?" I nodded, thinking of Anna's radiant smile. "It's when you don't speak. Just look at me. Even though you're really just seeing someone else through me, I honestly don't give a damn. Just looking at that face makes me happy enough." I softened my tone and said calmly, "So, even though you've made me do a lot of things I never wanted to, I still can't bring myself to be angry at you. But like you said, I'm not him. And even if your faces look alike, you're not the same person. So, we've both been using each other as substitutes. I don't owe you anything, and I don't love you. Let's just call off this marriage." Before I could finish, Willow abruptly hung up the phone. Chapter 10. I took 2 tablets of Astasalam. Only in my dreams can I see Anna again. Return to those 4 years when we were madly in love. After the college entrance exam, with all our friends as witnesses, we could finally be together openly. You know that feeling. Walking down the street hand in hand with the person you love. Watching a movie together. Even if you don't speak, the air itself tastes sweet. We could finally ride the motorcycle we loved. Speeding freely through the open world. David once said, "George and Anna are the most perfect couple I've ever seen. Just standing together, they look like they came straight out of a romantic drama." Anna laughed and told him to keep talking. I leaned casually against the bike, watching our friends joke around. Later, when we went to the same university, we started a motorcycle team and joined races together. Honestly, she really was captivating. Her name was always popping up on the confession wall. And after every class, Some guy would try to confess to her, afraid that I'd get jealous. She went straight to the campus radio station that same day, and publicly announced our relationship to the whole school. Many people said we didn't look like the kind of couple who could last long, but who would have thought that it would last 4 years. My parents finally found out I was in a relationship. That day, they called me home, furious, and demanded I break up with that bastard. I refused. My father picked up a stick to hit me. I snatched it out of his hand and snapped, "Don't push me to hit back. You both have your own families, and for years you've never cared about me. What right do you have to interfere in my life now? Who the hell do you think you are? I'm sick and tired of your hypocrisy. What am I in your eyes? Just a tool to carry on the family name." My father gritted his teeth and said, "I'm your father. I gave you this life. You'll never escape the fate of being a Wong." My mother yelled, "We've spoiled you too much. That's why you dare to talk to us like this. Was it that bitch who taught you to say such things?" While she was cursing, Anna appeared. She stood in front of me, neither humble nor afraid, and said, "All these years, you've never cared for him. He's never known your love, and yet you expect him to repay your kindness. Why? Why should he obey you? He's the person I love most. You may not love him, but I do." My mother, enraged, raised her hand to slap her. Before she could, I shoved her away. That day, I held Anna's hand and walked out of that house. Neither of us spoke. We just sat there in silence all night. We made a promise, after graduation, we'd get married, but just before graduation, strange things started happening. I was being followed for no reason. Sometimes, flower pots would fall when I walked by. Anna began acting distracted, absent-minded. One day, she suddenly asked me, "If one day I'm gone, what will you do?" I shrugged and said, "Die with you." I wasn't joking. Before 14, I had no family, no friends, rebellious, wild, and lost. I didn't know what it meant to live. Then I met her. She was my salvation. I couldn't imagine what I'd do without Anna. "Don't," she said, shaking her head. "Even if I'm gone, you have to live well. Find someone who loves you, get married, have children. Promise me." "Okay." I pulled her into my arms and smiled. "Stop talking nonsense. In this life, the only thing I'll ever do is put a wedding dress on you. I won't marry anyone else." She pouted. "Don't joke." "I'm serious," I said. "Why are you being so serious? What's wrong? Don't tell me you found another guy behind my back." She choked up slightly and gave a soft laugh. "What are you talking about?" "Of course not." I grinned. "You wouldn't dare. Otherwise, I'd just marry someone else and make you regret it for life. It was just a joke." She poked my forehead, half annoyed, half smiling. "If you ever really get married and the bride isn't me, I'll show up in a wedding dress and crash the ceremony." When I proposed to Anna, she said if I could beat her in the race, she'd marry me. I agreed immediately, promised I'd win. And with that trophy and a ring, proposed to her in front of everyone. But I never imagined that race would be the one she'd never return from. In my dream, the scene shifted into a foggy forest. When I reached the finish line, I only remembered the deafening cheers, the blazing heat of summer, and the big screen flashing the news that she had fallen off a cliff, amidst the fire and chaos. In that moment, there was nothing left but silence. Chapter 11. Anna. I jolted awake, my back drenched in sweat. The phone rang. It was David. "George, there's a race up on the mountain road. You coming?" I said, "Yeah, I'm coming." It wasn't my usual track, but I figured it was time to move forward. He said, "This one's a small race. There'll be a big one in a few days. You in?" Domi and the others already went ahead. Leaning against my bike, I lit a cigarette and said, "Sure, I need the practice anyway. I'll join." He laughed. "I heard a lot of well-known racers are joining, especially this female rider from abroad. She's incredible, but she never takes off her helmet, so no one knows what she looks like. If I meet her, I'll ask for her autograph." I exhaled a cloud of smoke and teased him, "Look at you, fanboy. I'll just win the trophy for you." David's eyes turned a little red. "George, seeing you like this, I'm really happy for you." I patted his shoulder. When I took my final drag and turned my head, I saw Willow. Our eyes met, and I could clearly see the light flicker in hers. "George?" I didn't plan to answer. I crushed out the cigarette, but she grabbed my sleeve. She said, "Can we talk?" She stood in front of me, backlit, her face half hidden in shadow. I looked at her quietly. Such a familiar face. What a pity she wasn't Anna. She said, "Don't look at me like that." Willow suddenly raised her voice. "George, how dare you lie to me?" She seemed furious, though I couldn't understand why. I only shook off her hand and said slowly, "Willow, shouldn't you be happy?" Her brows furrowed, and she blocked my path. Angry. "Heh, happy? You made me your substitute, and I should be happy. George, do you even have a conscience?" Her eyes were burning with rage, and she bit her lip, trembling. No wonder you always looked at me like you'd found something you lost. No wonder you'd stare at me all the time. I thought you really loved me. I even foolishly agreed to the arranged marriage between our families. I must have been such an idiot. I waited until she finished, then said quietly, Willow, weren't you using me as a substitute too? Your true love's back. You don't need to poison yourself with me anymore. The substitute game was over. She took a step closer, her eyes unwavering. Even if I was a substitute, weren't you trying to move on because of me? Would you have done it for her? I thought for a moment, then answered honestly. No. I remembered what Anna once said. If the bride isn't me, I'll show up in a wedding dress and crash your wedding. That was the last obsession I allowed myself to keep. Willow pressed her lips together. So you never liked me at all? I looked straight at her, calm and steady. You don't like me. I don't like you. Isn't that fair? She said. She stopped herself, biting down hard on her lip. Of course it's not fair. George, you're nothing but a dog at my side. There are 6 days left until the wedding. You'll regret this, I replied. I won't. Chapter 12. After packing my luggage, I boarded the flight to Shanghai. There were only 4 days left before the wedding. My parents still hadn't called it off. They were clinging to a sliver of hope that Willow and I might somehow make up. I looked down and touched the red string I'd worn for 7 years. I thought, once the race is over, I'll finally sever ties completely with that hollow family. I finally understood, some parents just don't love their children, and I'd made peace with that. David came to pick me up from the airport and took me to the hotel. He said, I heard that female racer is staying here too. Maybe we'll run into her. I chuckled. You her fanboy now? David scratched his head. I just think, some of her moves remind me of Anna. My heart skipped a beat. Sensing the awkward silence, David quickly changed the subject. George, a lot of our old friends are joining this race too. They'll be thrilled to see you here. When we arrived at the track, I really did see many familiar faces. Most of them had been Anna's friends back in the day. They were people with rough pasts, pulled out of their darkness by her hand. Each of them finding a new purpose to chase in life. There, the white bike. David nudged me and pointed towards someone. They were a little far away, so I couldn't see clearly, but when I looked, coincidentally, that person turned their head too, the helmet glinting under the light. Strange. A wave of recognition hit me like lightning. My hands started to tremble. My heart pounded so hard it nearly leapt out of my throat. David laughed and shouted, George, we're all counting on you out there. As the countdown for the race began, I locked my eyes on that white motorcycle. Suddenly, I remembered the race from 3 years ago, the one before everything fell apart. Before the start, Anna had said to me, if you can beat me, I'll marry you. And I had promised her, with all the confidence in the world, that I'd win the trophy and propose to her under the cheers of the crowd. The engines roared to life. David seemed to shout something at me, but I couldn't make it out. At that moment, I could only see one thing, that white blur ahead of me. I thought, I need an answer, no matter who she is. I have to see the face beneath that helmet. The timer hit 0. I shot forward like an arrow loosed from a bow, racing as if my life depended on it. Chapter 13. The wind roared past my ears, like 1,000 horses charging all at once. I pushed the throttle inch by inch to its limit. My fingertips went numb from the vibration, and even my breath carried the bitter taste of gasoline. The curve loomed ahead. The screech of rubber scraping asphalt sliced through my nerves. I leaned into it by instinct, tilting, cutting through the bend, accelerating out. In my eyes, there was only that flash of white ahead. Her taillight flickered once in front of me, and I closed the distance, chasing it relentlessly. Every heartbeat pulsed in rhythm with that red light. Time stretched thin, the world fading into gray and white. Only the roar of engines filling my ears. Just a little closer, a little more. I could almost hear the rush of blood pounding through my veins. On the final corner, she slowed. I didn't. In that instant, I didn't know whether I wanted to win, or just prove she was real. The checkered flag fluttered in the wind. I heard voices shouting in the distance. My tires left long black trails. The whole bike trembled beneath me. I stopped, the air inside my helmet burning hot. Victory tasted like gasoline and resurrection. Until I saw the screen. It showed I'd won. Champion. And the female racer. She had a foreign name. We followed the staff backstage. My jaw tightened as I stepped forward, blocking her path. I knew it was rude, but I had to see her. I asked if she could take off her helmet. She didn't move, just stood there, silent. Even her figure was so much like hers. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might burst. Finally, she spoke. I'm sorry. Sorry. In that moment, everything around me turned cold. So it wasn't her. Of course not. I remembered that summer, Anna asking me, if I'm gone one day, what will you do? And me, laughing, saying I'd die for her, but I hadn't. I lowered my head, my lips trembling uncontrollably. That was it, the last trace of hope gone. I turned to leave, but suddenly, someone grabbed my arm. I looked back, my gaze following from her fingers to the slender wrist, and saw it, a red string, frayed, faded. The same as mine. My mind went blank. Then, she lifted her hand and removed her helmet, and I saw the face I'd been dreaming of for 3 years. The same curve of her smile, the same warmth. Anna, my Anna. I missed her so much, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. Now I knew what it meant to be so moved you can't speak. 3 years had passed, and she looked almost unchanged, yet somehow, she had. Otherwise, why were my eyes blurring with tears? Under the golden lights, she stood glowing, a halo around her. She squinted at me, smiling. Try hard, badass, she said playfully. What? Pretending you don't know me now? I couldn't hold it back anymore. I pulled her into my arms, cursing between my sobs. Damn it, why did you take so long to come back? She smiled faintly. I heard the try hard badass was getting married and the bride wasn't me. So of course, she said. I came back to crash the wedding. She hooked her arms around my neck and kissed me, and I could hear it. That subtle tremor and choked breath, hidden inside her voice. Chapter 14. I held her tightly, desperately, afraid that if I loosened my grip even a little, I'd wake up and realize this was all just a dream. I was so tired, so even if this was an illusion, let me stay asleep just a little longer. She bit her lip and whispered, I'm sorry. I promised that if you beat me, I'd marry you, but I broke that promise for 3 years. Her eyes softened. Do you blame me? I shook my head. No, how could I? As long as you came back. I don't need anything else. I just need you. That day, at the awards ceremony, I offered the trophy to Anna. As I looked at her, the woman before me overlapped with the girl from years ago. A proposal, 3 years late, and finally, a perfect ending. Chapter 15. That night, we turned all the longing of the past years into movement, again and again, claiming each other through sweat and tears. Even when we were completely exhausted, neither of us wanted to stop. In the end, she lay in my arms and finally began to tell me everything that had happened over the years. It was a dramatic story, almost absurd. The reason Anna and Willow looked so much alike was because they were truly sisters. Anna's mother had also been a rich young heiress who fell in love freely with Anna's father. But Willow's mother interfered, drugged Anna's father, got pregnant, and took her place. Unable to tolerate such betrayal, Anna's mother left, only to find herself pregnant as well. Later, when Willow's mother learned of their existence, she secretly used her power to suppress them. That pressure slowly turned Anna's mother bitter, filling her with a desire for revenge. So she controlled Anna, ordering her to go abroad to help her uncle's business and to strike against the Liu family. Anna refused, because of me. So Anna's mother targeted me instead. Suddenly, those inexplicable times I was followed made sense. Anna got scared. She begged her mother not to hurt me. But her mother, now completely consumed by obsession, gave her an ultimatum. Leave this place. So they staged a fake death. Anna was taken abroad. For 3 years, she barely slept more than a few hours a day. Just so she could see me sooner. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, You have no idea how much I missed you. She told her story as if it were someone else's. How she struggled to prove herself. How she fought to break free from her mother's control. She hadn't dared to see me or contact me, afraid that doing so would endanger me. She finished her story in just a few dozen minutes. But I could feel how hard those years must have been for her. She held me tightly. And I held her even tighter, as if I could merge her into my very bones. Anna's voice trembled as she said, Every time I missed you so much I thought I'd go insane. I'd stab my wrist with the tip of a pen and tell myself, hurry, hurry. George is still waiting for me. He said he'd win a trophy for me on the track. That he'd marry me. He's so stubborn, he'll wait for me forever. So I studied like crazy, bit by bit breaking free from her control. Until I could finally stand before you again. Her tears dried and flowed again. As if she were releasing all the emotions she had buried for years. I gently caressed her face and pressed a soft kiss on her forehead. Then I said, So, Anna, will you marry me? Chapter 16. 3 days before the wedding, I took Anna to get our marriage certificate first. When the steel seal stamped down between our two faces in the photo, Anna began to cry even as she smiled. Through her sobs, she said, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I came too late. I scrambled to wipe away her tears, cupping her face gently. I shook my head and said softly, As long as the ending is you, it doesn't matter if you came late. At that same time, a photo suddenly began spreading around our circle. On a motorcycle, a slender, fair hand rested against the chest of a racing champion, and his arm was wrapped tightly around the woman's waist. The screen seemed to overflow with raw hormones. It was taken right after the race that day, by David and the others at the track. No one knew how the photo got out. But even people in our community had seen it. As soon as someone posted the photo in the group chat, it exploded with comments. Wait, doesn't that guy look exactly like George? No way, did George turn into this now? Could they be long-lost brothers or something? Then someone added, this actually looks like how George used to be. Another chimed in, that girl in the photo kinda looks like Willow. Wow, since when did Willow start riding motorcycles? Someone else replied, that's not Willow, looks like some female writer from abroad. Gotta admit though, they look good together. Then another said, but didn't Willow just tell us yesterday that George would regret it before the wedding, that he'd come crawling back, begging her to marry him? Ha, someone responded. So Willow really thought George would die without her. Turns out she was just the stand-in all along. While Anna was trying on her wedding dress in our bridal suite, I got a call from Willow. Her voice was cold. George, who is she? Anna took the phone from my hand. She looked up at me with a lazy, amused smile and said into the receiver, Miss Ex-Girlfriend, let me introduce myself. I'm his legal wife. Chapter 17. Anna and I met up with everyone on the mountain road. We rode our beloved bikes, racing all the way to the summit. Everyone was laughing and crying at once. From behind me, she held my hand tightly. It felt just like that summer when we were 18 again. I laughed and said, Anna, how about running away with me? Her eyes shimmered with tears. This time, she grabbed my hand. And together we ran through the summer night. Anna tiptoed and kissed the corner of my lips. But I turned the tables, grabbing her waist and pulling her into a deep, lingering kiss. That familiar softness, that wild passion, none of it could compare to the joy of finding each other again. It made up for our burning, reckless, romantic, shattered youth, a love that once had no ending. I don't know if what we had was redemption for each other. I only know that in every journey we take, love is the greatest, truest answer. Chapter 18. We partied half the night at David's shop and only fell asleep when dawn was breaking. When I woke up, everyone was sprawled across the floor in every possible position. I really liked this kind of atmosphere. I planned to step outside and feel the cool mountain air, but unexpectedly, I saw Willow. She was sitting under a telephone pole, looking utterly exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. I had no idea when she'd arrived, or how long she'd been there, or what she wanted. I didn't want to see her, but she got up and blocked my way before I could turn around. George, she said, let's get married. She pulled a household registration book from her coat. I didn't know what kind of game she was playing. I took a step back, raised my hand to show my wedding ring, and said, Willow, I'm already married. She froze in place when she heard that. Then she asked, you married that little rebel girl? I nodded. She snapped, furious. How can you marry anyone? You've only known her for a few days. Why can she? But I. She stopped mid-sentence, her tone softening. Looking at me quietly, she bit her lip and said, I haven't told my family to cancel the wedding yet. 2 days from now, let's just go through with it as planned. Okay. I shook my head. The wedding won't be canceled. I'll just change the bride. For a second, she was completely stunned. Then she laughed bitterly and scoffed. If your wife finds out she's just a stand-in, she'll definitely divorce you. George, don't be stupid. I'm your best choice. Oh, Willow didn't know. Anna was the one I had loved all along. The next second, a woman's voice came from behind me. Don't worry, we won't be getting divorced. Anna walked up, wrapped her arm around mine, and tiptoed to press a kiss on my lips. Then she said calmly, because those who betray will go to hell. Staring at the face so similar to her own, Willow said nothing. She just turned and walked away, lost and broken. Chapter 19. 2 days before the wedding, Anna and I were busy editing the guest list, only inviting our closest friends, wanting this to be our wedding. We were both exhausted from the endless planning, when I unexpectedly got a call from Makoto. His voice on the other end was weak and pleading. Can you see Willow? She's been drinking so much she got a stomach ulcer. She's in the hospital. I frowned, confused. What does that have to do with me? Makoto sighed deeply. I used to think Willow was really still waiting for me. He continued. I thought when I came back, she'd finally choose me without hesitation. For a week, she stayed with me, but she kept looking at her phone. I knew she was waiting for your message. You never called her, not even once. So she came to see you and said she wanted to break off the engagement, just to provoke you, he said. But you walked away so calmly. You have no idea how insane she went after you left. That's when I realized, in this whole stand-in game, she'd actually fallen for you, he added quietly. When she found out you were with someone else, she even murmured your name in her sleep. I frowned and cut him off. I'm not interested in hearing this. I never had feelings for her, I said. Not once, I said. She's the same, just unwilling to accept that she lost control in this relationship. Then I hung up. Chapter 20. The day before the wedding, Wang Corporation and Su Corporation announced a high-profile joint acquisition of the Liu Group. Only then did everyone finally realize the Liu family had an illegitimate daughter living abroad all along, but instead of fighting for inheritance, she and her mother had joined forces for revenge. That day, everyone online was also buzzing about another thing: how much Anna Su looked like Willow. And at that exact moment, I announced that I would marry my first love from youth, the wedding set for the next day. That's when everyone connected the dots. The mysterious female racer was her. She was my love who had returned from the dead. My father was overjoyed, praising me for being farsighted. He said proudly, "You truly take after me, better than the master himself." But that very day, I brought Anna home and told them that from this moment on, I was cutting all ties with them. I'd never been able to do it before. Kept tearing myself apart inside, because I thought they gave me life, because deep down, I still had illusions. I wanted their understanding, but coming into this world wasn't my choice, and since I'm already here, I'm my own person. When I was writhing in pain again and again, they stood at a distance, watching me drown in that dark ocean, never once reaching out to save me. If I can't have it, then I won't want it anymore. After all, not everyone in this world is born with family love. Learning to accept the absence of certain emotions, that too is part of growing up. When I left, my parents stood before me. For the first time, I saw panic on their faces, but that no longer had anything to do with me. Chapter 21. The wedding day. Anna wore the wedding gown I had prepared long ago. It fit her perfectly. She looked at me and asked, "How did you know I'd come back?" I pinched her cheek gently and smiled. "I didn't know if you would," I said, "but I reserved the meaning of your return." I wore the suit she had chosen for me. Gone was the reckless arrogance of my youth, replaced by calm maturity and quiet warmth. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. Looking into the mirror at our reflection, my eyes grew slightly red. This day, I had waited too long for it. Anna turned and kissed the corner of my lips. She teased softly, "Try hard, badass. How strong is the wind this time? Why are your eyes teary again?" That one line, it hit me right in the heart. I'd once imagined her saying that to me at the foot of the mountain, but it had only been an illusion then. Now that illusion had come true. What was lost had been found again. Heaven had been far too kind to me. I lowered my head and kissed her eyes, smiling as I said, "I was just thinking, there's someone who misses me. Someone who'll wait to see the spring rain, the summer wind, the autumn leaves, and the winter snow with me." So even when I was alone, I kept moving forward, fearless, because I believed that at the end of every cliff, the wild wind still blows, and the one I love will be there, waiting to say, "Hello, we meet again."